Welcome. If you're finally ready to make a plan for your money, you're in the right place. My name is Zach. My wife and I have been budgeting for the past 4 years. In that time, we've saved up for vacations, a new house, we've had 2 kids, and we've seen our net worth increase more than we would have thought possible. We've also helped hundreds of people, friends, family members, and people online just like you, learn how to budget, be intentional with their money, and get the things that they want financially. So if that's you, if you're finally ready to sit down, make a plan, be intentional, and work with the numbers, we can get you there too. Let's dive right in. All right, let's start with the basics. What is a budget? I think the word budget gets a bad rap these days. People think of a budget as something that's restrictive, that keeps you from spending the way you want to. Couldn't be further from the truth. A budget is just a plan for your money, and it's your money, right? Whatever you want to plan for, whatever you value, you can do that. It's your plan, it's your money. Now, just because you have a plan, doesn't mean it's a good plan. There are 2 main methods people use for budgeting these days. I'll tell you about my favorite, but the best budgeting method for you is the one that you're actually going to use. The first method people use is called expense tracking. Expense tracking is popular in apps like these. The way an expense tracking app works is you link your bank account, set up your categories, and add amounts to each different category. As transactions come in throughout the month, you categorize them according to the categories you set up. At the end of the month, some of these categories you'll be over in, and some you'll be under in. I found that this is a decent start for people to get more mindful about their spending. The problem with expense tracking, though, is that most people use it to just kind of look back at the end of the month and say, shoot, I guess we messed up again. It's a way to kind of see where you mess up, but it doesn't really change your behavior because you're always looking backwards and never looking forwards. And that brings us to the second method, my favorite method. It's called zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is where we give every single dollar a job. It's kind of like that old thing you used to do where you got your allowance and put it into envelopes. We basically make digital envelopes for all of our cash and divide it up at the start of the month. That way we have a plan for our money, but we can make changes as things come. That means when you go over in a category, you have to cover that from somewhere else. And when you go under in a category and you save money that month, you get to move that to somewhere that really matters to you, like a savings goal or something fun, or maybe some investments. Zero-based budgeting is popular in apps like these. Today, we're going to use MyBudgetCoach as it's my favorite of the zero-based apps. I like it because it's zero-based, which is my favorite method, and also includes a connection to a coach. Learning this stuff can be hard. Having somebody who's got your back can be really helpful. So let's dive in and create a budget with MyBudgetCoach. All right, we've got a fresh new budget ready for us to set up. The first thing I like to do when I create a new budget is to add all of my accounts. We want to make sure that we add every account that we use in real life. This is all of our checking, all of our savings, and all of our credit cards too. The way you do that is to hit this Add Account button over here. You'll have 2 different options for how to add your account. The first one is a local account. This means it's not connected to your bank in any way, and so all the transactions you have to add yourself manually. I don't love this method. Part of budgeting is that we want to build new habits, right? Like we want to have a lifestyle change. We want to be the type of person who checks their budget regularly, who uses it, and who lives by it. So for me, adding a local account means you add a bunch of friction, having to add all those transactions one by one. So I would prefer, rather, to add a linked account. Linked accounts are great because you log into your bank, it securely sends your transactions over, and all you have to do is see the new transactions and categorize them. So I'd highly recommend linking as many of your accounts as you can to your existing financial institutions. For today's demo though, we'll just create local accounts because they're easier to play around with when we're not actually using a real account. So let's go ahead and add a checking account. Let's say that we have, $2,000 in our checking account. Next up, let's add a savings account. And let's say that we have maybe $5,000 in our savings account. And we probably have some credit cards too. So let's go ahead in here and get a credit card. Call this credit card number 1. And let's say we have a balance of $500 on it. And a lot of people have multiple credit cards, so let's go ahead and add a second credit card as well. Let's say this one we have $750 on the balance. All right, cool. So now you can see over here, we have all of our accounts added. Each of these accounts has a running balance up here for us to see, and it has a ledger below it. This ledger is every transaction that will happen in the account. So it starts with a starting balance, and then when deposits come in, we'll have deposits. When payments go out, we'll have payments. And over time, we'll keep track of everything that happens in each of these accounts. Now, once we've added all these accounts together, we see a total over here, this $5,750. This dollar amount right here is a very special number. It's called the to budget number. And to learn more about that, let's head over to the budget. All right, now we're on the budget screen and we can see that $5,750 is highlighted at the top as the to budget amount. I love this moment when you create your budget for the first time and you see how many dollars you own currently and you get to give each of those dollars a job. Our goal in zero-based budgeting is to get that to budget number down to zero. Once we do that, we know that we've given every single dollar a job and we have a plan for our money. Now, this doesn't mean that we'll have $0 in the bank, but rather it means every dollar we have in the bank will have a job already. There will be $0 left that we haven't decided what we want to do ahead of time. All right, I want to pause for a second and make sure that this point really lands with you. In zero-based budgeting, we're only ever budgeting the dollars that we already own. We aren't looking into the future and saying, well, I know I'll get a paycheck at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and make a plan for that money. This scarcity of only working with the dollars that you own is critical to making zero-based budgeting work. I love it for a couple of different reasons. One, the future is uncertain. We never know what next month will look like, and honestly, every month looks really different. So dealing with the dollars that you actually own and planning those forward is a much better way of thinking about things. The second reason is that when you deal with the scarcity of the dollars that you actually own, you have to make trade-offs in the moment. Do I value this thing more or that thing more? You can no longer just look at your bank account or think about that next check you're going to get and be like, I guess I can just go ahead and buy this because I'll get paid again in the future. You deal with the real money you have and make real decisions. That forces you to save up for the things that you want and to really make progress towards your goals. Got it? Okay, cool. Let's get back in. Okay, so we've got $5,750 and every single one of them needs a job. This is where your category structure comes into play. Every good budget is built on categories and category groups that make sense to your life and how you actually spend your money. This is the template that a budget gives me to start with. I don't love it. Let's rework it to something that makes more sense for my life personally. All right, I've got all our categories entered. These are the categories that I like to have in my budget and the category groups as well. I also like to put emojis. Stand by. That looks better. Now we have all our categories and they all have a great emoji so that we can recognize them really quickly wherever we are in the budget. All right, now that we have all of our dollars to assign and all of our categories to assign them to, we're ready to start actually funding our budget. This means that we'll be moving the money from the to budget category down to each of our individual digital envelopes until we fill them up or run out of money. Hopefully, we'll have enough money to cover the month that we're currently in. We might even have enough money to budget out into the future. And if we don't have enough money to cover the current month, that's fine too. We'll just allocate accordingly based on what's coming up next. Now, ideally, people start their budgets at the beginning of the month, but realistically, that hardly ever happens. Odds are you're probably starting your new budget in the middle of the month. That's totally okay. The way zero-based budgeting works, it's actually pretty easy to start in the middle of the month. We'll just keep that in mind as we're funding these categories. If your mortgage has already hit this month, we don't need to fund it for this month. We can wait and fund it for next month. I'll show you what I mean. Let's dive back in. All right, I know that my first category group is these fixed categories, and usually we would start from the top and work our way down. But when you're first starting your budget, I actually encourage people to find their savings category and start there. And here's why. Most people, when they add their savings account to their budget, they look at their to budget number and they realize, hey, I think all that money in my savings account is contributing to all these dollars I need to assign. Why is that? I don't want to spend my savings. I'm saving them for a reason. And that's great. But this is part of the mind shift that comes with zero-based budgeting. Remember, our job is to give every dollar a job, and that means our savings as well. So if you had something in mind of what you were saving that money for, let's go ahead and say it by enumerating what each of those dollars is for. So I had $5,000 in my savings account. In my mind, I knew that like $3,000 of that was for a down payment we're working towards. And I knew that $2,000 of that was for this vacation coming up. The beauty of this is now you know exactly where those dollars are allocated to. And if you want to make a change in the moment, you can do that. You can decide to pull a little bit from vacation in order to fund something else. Now that we have savings, let's go right back up to the top and take it from the top down. Fixed categories for me are the categories that I know will come at a certain time and cost a certain amount. They're pretty fixed in their nature and they don't fluctuate too much. Let's pretend that we're starting this budget in the middle of the month. Because of that, my mortgage, I don't need to fund this month because my mortgage payment always comes out on the first of the month. Right now, we're going to pretend it's the middle of August. So I don't need to fund mortgage for now. My cell phone bill, though, comes out towards the end of the month. So I'm going to go ahead and put the $75 in there. And here we can learn about the different areas of each category. You've got the budgeted section, the spent section, and the balance. The budgeted is how much you added this month. The spent is how much you spent this month. And the balance is just how much is left in your envelope at the current time. So you can see that we added $75. We haven't spent anything. So we have $75 left in the balance. Subscriptions, about $50 for us. Streaming services, about $35. We pay $37 a month in life insurance. Car insurance is an interesting one. We pay this every 6 months, and I think our bill comes up in 3 months. So part of budgeting is preparing for those expenses that are coming up ahead of time so that you kind of even out your budgeting over time and you're not really surprised when a huge bill comes up. So I know that we pay about $600 every 6 months, but since I've got 3 months to go, I'm going to go ahead and set $200 in here so that I'm ready for it. All right, let's look at groceries. We've done most of our grocery shopping for this month already, so we only really need about $100 more. Now, these categories I call sweepable. To me, sweepable means that if we do really well in these areas, like if we, count coupons or do whatever, like we can save money and we could sweep this money down to something that's like really exciting for us, like a goal or a investment or something like that. So sweepable are kind of the categories we like to focus on as a way to try to save money. And we could do that by being really good about our groceries and really good about our eating out. For eating out for the rest of the month, I think we'll need about $100 more. Entertainment is one for us that we roll over every month. So we don't really spend much in a given month, but we try to keep $50 in there every month no matter what, so that we can build it up to something that we really want to spend it on, like a play or something. All right, so you can see that we only have $103 left to budget with, and we still got quite a few categories. So I'm going to go down and make sure that we can cover gas for the next few days. Our electric bill, luckily, was already paid at the beginning of August, so we don't need to worry about that. Water, the same. Kids Plus for us is a category that we keep like extra things we want to do for our children in. And we've already had a huge birthday for our 4-year-old this month, so we've already bought a lot of gifts. So I don't think we need to fund any more of that this month. Luckily, with household supplies, we're good. Games and books, we try to put a little bit in there each month just so that we're ready. And then hygiene, luckily, we're good for this month. So we've gotten to the point where we have $23 left in our 2 budget. And that's pretty good. But remember, in zero-based budgeting, our goal is to always get to zero. So what I'm going to do with that money is I'm going to hold it for next month. That means we're going to have $0 left in this month. And when we look over at September, you can see that we have $23 ready for September. Now, it's not much, but it's a start. I'm going to go ahead and take that $23 and put it towards our mortgage. This is nowhere near what we need for our mortgage, but it's getting us there, right? And what we've done now is if I switch back to August, you can see that we've reached zero. We have budgeted every single dollar we own. And this is a magical moment. Let me tell you why. When you've budgeted down to zero, you've already made all of your decisions with your money. There's no slush fund. There's no discretionary fund. You've made a plan for every dollar, and every dollar has a home now. This is liberating. You don't have to keep in your mind, I think I've got that bill coming up. Am I going to afford it? Should I buy that? Am I going to be able to afford it? A lot of people, what they would do before budgeting is they'd look at their bank balance and say, well, I guess I have a couple $100s in the bank and I really want this thing on Amazon. So I think I've paid my bills. I'm not sure. That's crazy, right? Trying to keep all that in your head is madness. We don't have to do that anymore. Now we can live according to our budget. That means when we go to the grocery store, we look at the grocery budget item, and whatever's sitting there in that envelope is how much we can afford to spend on groceries. When we go out to eat, the same thing. We look at that line item, and whatever's there, that's what we can afford to spend. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, this sounds super restricting. What if I need to make a change? Don't worry, you can make a change whenever you want on the fly. Your budget is a living document, not a rigid thing. It's there to flex and change as your priorities change. Sometimes that's over months, and sometimes that's in the moment when you see something that you just gotta have because it's a great deal, and so you make a decision right there to make a change. Let's look at what that looks like. All right, let's say that I'm on Amazon and there's an awesome deal on a board game that I just have to have. But the deal, it costs $30. Now, I only have $15 in my Zach's game category, so technically I can't afford it. All of my other money is accounted for somewhere else. But that's okay. In a zero-based budget, you can flex at any time. And the cool thing here is you get to make a decision about what you actually value more. I value this board game a lot. I know I value it more than one of these things. I just have to decide which one. So let's look around. I can't really take it from my cell phone bill because that's a fixed expense that's going to happen, right? Groceries, that would be kind of hard. But you know what? I think I'd be willing to eat out one less time this week. If I go to Chipotle one less time, it's about $15. So let's go ahead and do it. I can choose from the $100 remaining in the eating out, and I can choose to transfer 15 of that down to Zach's games. When I've done that, I've made a real decision in real time of like what is more important to me, right? I've said, yeah, you know what? It's worth it to me to eat out one last time in order to have the $30 in my games this month so that I can buy this thing on Amazon. All right, let's recap what we've learned so far. We know how to add our accounts. We know how to see how much money we have to budget. We know how to budget that money into the categories, and we know how to live by the amounts in each of those categories. We know that it's not really that restrictive because you could choose to make a change in the moment as you want to. Now, budgeting is not something we do one time. This is awesome that we have a good setup and that we've learned some of the basic skills. But the truth is, your budget is something you should live with. It's something you should refer to often. So let's talk about some of those habits that make a good budgeter good at what they do, right? The things that you should do daily, weekly, monthly in order to live by your budget, keep it up to date, and really hone in your intentional spending so that you can meet those goals that you have. The first budgeting habit you need to implement is the habit of categorizing your transactions. This is something you want to do daily or as close to daily as possible. At any point, you can look up in the right-hand side and see how many uncategorized transactions you have. If you've linked your bank account, these will come in automatically every day, and all you have to do is go and categorize them. I'm going to click on this button, and we'll see that these are the two transactions we need to categorize right now. Now, the software is smart. Over time, it's going to learn about you, about how you spend, and about which payees go to which categories. But for now, it doesn't know much because we just got started, so we need to tell it. Verizon, for example, this is the cell phone bill. So I'm going to go in here and categorize it as such. Now you can see when I'm about to categorize it, I get a helpful little hint here. It shows me I have $75 sitting in that envelope ready to be spent, which is perfect because this bill was for $75. So we'll go ahead and categorize that. And then this next one is for Walmart. Now my wife went to Walmart and she told me that she split this about 50-50 between groceries and household supplies. So we need to split this transaction. In order to do that, you select split transaction and then you add the different categories. So we know that about half went to groceries and we know that about half went to household supplies. Now right here, we can see we're gonna have a problem. Household supplies has $0 in it. We'll have to cover that in a minute. But we know that about 25 went to groceries and about 25 went to household supplies. So I'll go ahead and add that split. And there we go. We've categorized all our transactions. So now let's go and see the impact on the budget. And this brings us to habit number 2 with budgeting. You're going to want to do this one also daily or as close to daily as possible, and that's covering your overspending. Whenever you see red in your budget anywhere, that means that you can't trust your numbers everywhere. For example, in household supplies, we spent $25 at Walmart and we didn't have anything budgeted for it. So our household supplies category is currently negative. Anytime you have a negative, it's going to appear red. Similarly to how when we had uncategorized transactions up at the top, those appeared red as well. Sometimes you'll see red up here, you'll see red in the to budget amount if you budget more money than you have, or you'll see red in a category if you've overspent it. We've got to cover this overspending from somewhere. Remember, we're in a zero-based budget, which means every dollar has a job and everything zeroes out at the end of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this from entertainment because we still have $50 left in entertainment and we're not really planning on spending it this month. So that should be okay. So I'll click on this and click cover overspending and I'll select entertainment, and you'll notice that it'll immediately move the $25 from here. We had 50, now it's 25. It'll move it down to household supplies, which covers the spending, which leads us back to zero. So now all of our categories are not red. All of our transactions are categorized, and so we know that we've categorized our transactions and covered our overspending, which means we can trust our numbers once again. The next budgeting habit is a fun one. This is what to do every time you get paid. Paydays are still super exciting in budgeting, except instead of thinking about all the things you're going to buy immediately, you think about how you're going to plan to buy things over time with that money. Let's go and categorize this transaction so we can start budgeting with it. All right, in our checking account, we have a deposit for $1,000. We'll pretend that this is a paycheck that came in. So I'm going to go ahead and categorize it, scroll down to the bottom, and say that it's income. Now that I've called that money income, in the to budget amount, you'll see that we have $1,000 to budget with, which is awesome. Now, we're still in the middle of August, and we've covered most of the things we need to for August. Now, what do I want to do with extra money? I could either get ready for September, or I could save that money with some extra savings because I've already got everything done for August that I need to. I'm going to choose to put, I don't know, maybe 250 of it onto the vacation. I want to make sure that we pump that up as much as possible so we can really enjoy it this year. And the rest of the money, I'm going to go ahead and hold it for next month. I'm going to go over to September and I'm going to try to budget all this down to zero. Remember, our goal is to always get back down to zero. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take all this money and I'm going to move it down to the mortgage. It's still not quite enough to pay our mortgage, but we're getting really close and it feels good to be ready for September before we're even in September. When you're ready for a month before that month even comes, we call that breaking the paycheck to paycheck cycle. It's one of the best benefits of budgeting. You'll get to the point where you have next month or even the next few months already planned for, so that when you get paid, you're not using that money immediately to cover this month's bills. You're using last month's money or the month before that to cover this month's bills. That extra buffer, that extra wiggle room is huge in helping you stress less about your money and be able to really make smart money moves the way you want to. All right, for our last two habits, we're going to pretend that August has just ended. Let's pretend it's September 1st or 2nd, and all of those transactions from August have had a chance to hit our bank and reflect in our budget. The first thing we want to do at the end of the month is always reconcile our accounts. Now, reconciling our accounts is something that is probably better to do more than once every month, but we at least want to do it every single month. And the reason is the more often you do it, the easier it is to spot any differences or make any fixes. So let's go to checking and see if the reconciliation looks good. Now, the way you reconcile an account is you go over here and you hit reconcile. Now, the point of reconciling is making sure that the balance you have in your budget matches the balance you have in the bank. If those two things match, then you know you're good. All of your transactions are right and all of your numbers can be trusted. For checking, I'll check my bank account and I'll see that this is accurate. So I'll say, yeah, looks good. I'll hit done reconciling and you'll see that all those transactions will turn into kind of a little lock symbol. And that's so that you know that these have been reconciled and they can be trusted. Now let's go check out a credit card. I think on credit card 2 here, we might have a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reconcile and it's going to say, hey, is this your bank balance? And I'm going to say, no, that's not my bank balance. My bank's balance is, let's say it's that much. Now, When I try to reconcile these two, it's going to say, well, wait a minute, you're $10 off. Something's wrong here. We can't trust our budget. We can't trust our numbers. So I'm going to go back through my bank statement, look at my credit card online, and see what's wrong. And I think this is a common culprit. Sometimes when you go out to eat and you pay, your bank will register that as the payment that you had. And then if you leave a tip, sometimes that sync doesn't come in properly and you have to fix it. So I'm going to go here and say, yeah, it was $95 to eat out, but we left a $10 tip. So when I add 10 to that, you can see that the reconciliation is good. This total number now matches, and I can hit done reconciling. All right, once you reconcile all your accounts, you know that you can go and close out the actual budget. So I'm going to go back to the budget and let's see where we are. So most of these categories are zeros, which is great because I don't need them to do anything else. The car insurance has $200, but I'm not going to move it anywhere. Remember, car insurance is coming up for me in 2 more months now, and I want to make sure that I'm ready for it. So we want to let this money roll over each time. Now, groceries, awesome. We saved money on groceries, but we also went over on eating out. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover this overspending from the groceries, and those will just kind of even each other out. All right, entertainment, we like to roll over. Zach's games, we like to roll over. Shreya's books, we like to roll over. But gas, we don't really need to roll it over. It looks like we did a good job on driving less or saving money in this area. So what we get to do is move this extra money to somewhere that matters for us. So this vacation is really important to us. We keep working on it. So I'm going to move all of this money down to that vacation. Now, this is a small example. Just moving $28 at the end of the month isn't a huge motivating factor, but imagine all the savings you can do in each of these categories. You and your partner, or you if you're budgeting alone, can kind of encourage each other. Let's do this little extra savings here and that extra savings there, because you know at the end of the month, you're going to sit down and get all those little dopamine hits when you get to move that money down to something that matters to you. And that's great. These little wins add up over time, and that's how we build wealth and reach our goals and increase our net worth over time, not to mention paying down debt and not bringing on new debt. Now, let me encourage you. Budgeting is a skill. Just like any skill, it takes practice, effort, and you're gonna mess up along the way. Don't get discouraged. It is totally worth it to become the type of person who uses a budget, lives by a budget, and plans for the future to reach their financial goals. If you're ready to get started budgeting today, I can't recommend MyBudgetCoach enough. MyBudgetCoach is the only budgeting app that connects you to a coach from day one at no extra cost. There are a lot of coaches to choose from, so pick a coach that fits your lifestyle, your personality, something that helps you resonate with your coach. You can reach out to your coach and message them, or schedule one-on-one calls with them for an additional cost. Budgeting is totally worth it. It's also hard. Get somebody in your corner that you can trust, that you can work with, and that can help you get over that learning curve so that you can become a pro budgeter and over time can meet your goals, stress less about money, fight with your partner less about money, and in general, just be able to use money as a tool to build the life you want instead of something that stresses you out and frustrates you. I know you can do it. Best of luck on your budgeting journey. If you have any thoughts or questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will listen to every single one and answer every single one of them. I love helping people budget, and I want to see you succeed. Best of luck. You've got this.